All right, worldwide followers, all 8 of you. It's a great morning. I'm with a very dear lifelong friend, Renee Boucher. Of course, we have John Dangler in the house holding us together, but just a great opportunity. Renee is from Portland, Oregon, and so that was where we were cutting our teeth. We did about a decade of Youth for Christ ministry together. Mostly in the metro area of Portland, and then I moved out, and you stayed. And Renee is kind of the way I would describe Renee is she's become kind of we always use the term like city father, but she's kind of a city mother for Portland, and has been kind of an anchor in the youth homeless sort of movement for over 40 years, and like I've always stayed in touch with Renee and see her in different parts of the world, but it seems like she has been kind of an apostolic leader in the prayer movement around different parts of the world and lots of different networks. And so she just brought some folks in from Portland that are processing kind of Brave City stuff in Portland. And so I thought, well, we gotta get a little time and just talk about, the one thing that a lot of church plant networks don't talk about that much is the issue of warfare and intercession and the whole thing. And it's kind of central to Brave Cities. We write a lot about the powers, and we talk about the powers and even in context of coming out of Babylon, which is, our idea of empire and how that's tied to powers. And so I just thought we would just talk and try to fire some questions at you. I know it's early, but you had a cup of coffee here at the Post.
I did.
If somebody were to ask you, Renee, like, what is the focus of your calling? I don't even know if I've ever really now we're both pushing on 60. What would you say your focus is and your heartbeat for the church worldwide? And just like for you, what do you feel like you're called to specifically in the next 20 years?
Yeah.
Viral.
I'll answer that, but I'm just distracted because you didn't mention that we planted a church together. Are we not talking about that anymore?
I figure
we don't talk about that.
Get to that.
Okay.
Get to that.
We have. The focus, I think the focus of my ministry is, was that the question?
Sure. Whatever.
I think my focus is really the idea of city transformation. Like, how do we, not even just city transformation, but how do we see the flourishing of all people? So I think a lot of believers like to pray this part of the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We hear, and in Portland as it is in heaven, in Los Angeles as it is in heaven, in Alton as it is in heaven. But what does that actually mean? Like, when we pray that, do we know what we are praying for? And so I like to ask people, if you were to imagine the kingdom coming, what would that look like? And what I think of is the idea of shalom, a place of wholeness and healing, a place of the renewal of all things. I think of the ability for all people to flourish so that the barriers to really knowing who God is can be broken down. And so that's what I long to see is those places that can be built where we are acknowledging the image of God in every human being and understanding that even before people know who God is, they are carrying a reflection of him in the earth. And how can we honor and respect and love that reflection in every human and find a place where we can meet the needs and bring light in the darkness and hope in the place of brokenness and all of those
what
things.
tends to be
Yeah.
the most, and John, fire away whenever you guys share a heart, is you're primarily focused on homeless issues. Renee's, it's not just that. I know it's not just that for you either, but and I know what you tend to talk about, John, is even city transformation stuff. So, but it's unique to me, like when we're working with the church, and I'll even go back to let's talk about the church plant and speak candidly. But back in those, that was back in the 90s, right?
That was in the 90s.
Somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
mid-90s,
So
mid-90s.
Renee was the other pastor in this, so it was me and Renee, and I was always focused. I mean, I like to say, back in those days, I think all I thought about was evangelism. It was
that is true.
And Renee had a prophetic gift, so we'd always be in meetings. I could see she was giving me like the side eye, so I knew she was getting some download from God that I was not privy to.
That he was not going to be very happy about.
Like, oh crap, Renee and God are trying to get my attention, but the Alton work has been more about works, more about the city. So like I always say, like this has been a maturing. Even the Denver 15 years, that was more than just evangelism. And so for me as a young evangelist, and then now I'm an old fart, it does feel like the deeper you go with Jesus, the more it has to be about the transformation of cities. And it's not that evangelism is not on my mind still and everything, but I just feel like now I think more about the city, about larger issues of people being set free, and even cities maybe being set free. But I feel like I'm still in my kind of learning years. Like if you were to talk to your classic pastor, what are some things you feel like you always have to bring up with them to like help them to see a deeper story?
When it comes to being able to look out at the city?
Yeah, like when you were trying to get my attention to think more holistically about what we're doing. How do you help pastors and leaders think more holistically about what they're doing?
Yeah. Does he always jump this far from like, let's talk about spiritual warfare?
Well, I know I can't
And
just
then
say,
we're
hey,
gonna change.
pray.
Then we're gonna change how do you
Well, okay, let me take a stab. Let me take a stab at tying these together, because as Hugh was
I used to always go, hey, Renee, teach us how to pray. And I remember one time I asked her, hey, just can you fly out and just pray for us? She's like, pray for yourself. Like, I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't want to say, hey, teach us how to pray, Renee, but like we gotta think about this differently. Why the powers and what do we do in this world? So
well, I mean, there's so many different directions just from your comments and from your question that I feel like I can go in. So a couple of things that are just coming to mind, and John can figure out how to edit them all together, I guess.
It's gonna roll like this.
We never edit. It's just like this is what comes out.
This is what comes out. All right. Yeah, a couple things that come to mind is one, when you were talking about, you were just this evangelist mindset. I think that we've been trained in the church to think about the one individual saying the prayer so that we can be assured that someday they're going into heaven. But really what I think when we read the scriptures, the picture that is painted there for us is, how do we live out our life in a way that begins to express the kingdom of God here on earth? And when we can make that paradigm shift, then we begin to care about what's happening down the street, or what's going on with our neighbor, or what's, these places of brokenness, or the margins, the marginalized people in our community and what's happening with them. We begin to care about those things in a different way, in a way that says, I want to walk alongside of you, rather than you are a project that I need to accomplish something with and move on to the next person. So I think being able to look at our city with that kind of kingdom perspective is the first thing.
So sometimes when people, and I think we threw some of this in the Brave City book, but sometimes when people ask us what we're doing in this space, I'll say we're like a neo-Trappist order, Benedictine, and we bring up the Benedictine motto order at Labor. And I think as I've read the history of that, sort of their cultural motto of that monastic community, it was the works that we do are how we actually intercede.
Mm-hmm.
So our prayer is our work, and our work is our prayer. And I for me, when people go, okay, if the church is going to be set free and cities are going to be set free, because I actually think the church needs to be set free. I think it will be a move back towards the works of the kingdom. And people always fight that. They always go, okay, you're just, because like right now, if you look at what's happening in, like you might even call it the post Charlie Kirk era, this new sort of rise of boldness. It seems to be almost predominantly about proclaiming the story of God and boldly standing up for our faith. But I haven't seen anything in this sort of what many people are calling a new revival. I don't hear anybody talking about doing the works of like. So I always go, to me, revival will be when you see people just as amped about trying to fix some things that are broken as they are about trying to just proclaim the story of God to some stranger on the corner. So I don't know. I get concerned when I just see sort of, although I suppose boldness is better than non-boldness, but sometimes there's a net zero effect on that when they just see us talking again. We're not doing anything. So
yeah, I think we have to reclaim humanity in some ways, like I think in the church, we can be so focused on the spiritual that and not that it's not right to be focused on the spiritual, but if we are only focused on the spiritual, we almost create a system of legality. It becomes a religious system rather than a holistic understanding of how God made us to be. Like he created man and he created woman and he said it was good, and there's something intrinsically good about our humanity and being able to help people walk into the fullness of who they were created to be, not just concerned. I don't want to keep saying the same point over and over again, but I think there's something about a holistic viewpoint that we need to understand that is a part of the healing and the freedom and even the becoming a disciple of Christ that we need to engage people in and be able to walk alongside people with. And so that means when you're walking alongside someone who has been through a lot of trauma and brokenness in their life, like it's not just one conversation and telling them about Jesus that makes a difference. It's becoming a part of their life, becoming a friend, becoming someone who will walk beside them.
That old way of just sharing the message is almost like that passage where you say, hey, keep warm and well fed. I think that's in James, right? It's literally like an evangelistic presentation. And then I'm going, oh, you're struggling, but hey, try to follow God. Good luck to you. That's the same spirit of like.
Well, this has been an interesting, like, to listen to you guys go back and forth on this. Like from the first question, it did feel like a jump, but then also like you talked about like we like to say your kingdom come. Like there's like a word, so we like to say that. And then your question is, but what does it look like? Like, how do we, you're trying to pull it into embodied, like that actual, abstract made concrete, like shalom, and everyone could flourish, and we're breaking down barriers. And then Hugh jumps back to like the evangelistic, which is like, at least in early phase proclamation. He's like, but as I've matured in that, it's because what would a city flourishing be? It'd be good news, right? What would barriers be and access be? It'd be good news, right? Like the good news becomes full. And so as we're kind of going through this, even as you just said, like, it's not just spiritual, like we're bringing these things into conversation with each other. And so for what I would like to suggest is, because you guys have the benefit of knowing each other for a long period of time. So I'm kind of new to the relationship here. And Hugh gave a little sketch of work you've done. But I think, because you're like, I don't want to keep saying this over and over. I actually think you can maybe emphasize or illustrate some of the points you're making by maybe telling a bit of your own journey and the work, the actual embodied work that you've done, kind of share a little bit about your own concrete story as a way for us to kind of get our hands around the abstract message, right?
Yeah.
So I can put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Well, I mean, I have 40 years of work, so I think of two specific things that I think I would like to share in this context. And one is when, I moved to Portland when I was 22 years old, and Hugh mentioned that we worked together in Youth for Christ. Well, I started a ministry for homeless youth. And during that time, I met a kid at the time. His name was Asian Mike on the streets. Everybody takes another name, but so he called himself Asian Mike. And he was one of the angriest kids that I had ever met. When we first met him, he came into our drop-in center during a Thanksgiving dinner, and he picked up like one of those round tables that 10 people can sit around, and he picked it up over his head and he threw it across the room. So I was like,
nice to meet you.
Like, hey buddy, let's go sit down at the piano bench, So he sat down at the piano bench and he turned around and he started playing the piano. And it was like the most beautiful, peaceful music that I had ever heard. And I felt like the Lord said, that is who he really is. Like, don't look at the man who just threw the table across the room. Listen to the music. That's the song of his life. And we entered into a relationship with him that became lifelong for him. He became a part of our family. We adopted him in, like, my husband and I considered him to be our son, and he considered us to be his family. And it was not easy. Like, it was 20 years of him in and out of jail, on and off the streets, dealing with mental health issues, like so many moments that were really, really hard. But we were committed to him for his life. And he had a transformational experience in a jail cell, that was a very supernatural experience where he really gave his life to Jesus. But it was walking through all of the hard things with him that really was the thing that brought transformation to his life. And he ended up dying of natural causes. He had a heart attack where, we were pulling him literally out of suicide leaps and drug overdoses and, guns in his backpack and, all running out in front of cars, all the things that he could have died from. But the last years of his life were years of peace and fulfillment and, really a beautiful story. So I think that's when people would come and want to work with us in the street ministry, I would say, this is something that you're committing to another person's life. Like, you're not just in and out, Yeah, you're not just serving them a meal and
right.
See you later, have a good time. Like, you're committing to walking through life with someone. Even after you leave this particular ministry, you're still going to be connected to people. And are you willing to do that? Are you willing to walk that journey? So that's
yeah. I always tell people when they go, well, why won't the churches get on with this? I go, well, that's the easiest answer in the world. They know it will work. And when you know something will work, then then that person is going to stay in my life. And I think ultimately that's why none of us really want to do the works of God, because they set up a relational dynamic. Even hospitality, it's not love of a stranger on do a block party once a year. It's, if you do the block party, then you actually have to walk with these families and these people, and who would want to do that?
Yeah.
And so
G.K.
that's
Chesterton.
transformational.
I always think of this line from G.K. Chesterton. He said, Christianity hasn't been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. For
That's so
existence.
good.
It's like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think another part is that sometimes I think and again, these are just things that we've learned or, picked up along the way that maybe are just wrong thinking. That we think that we have a duty to do, like, don't forget the poor, right? So we need to be able to give to the poor because we have something that they don't. We need to provide this for them. And then it feels like an obligation or a burden, but that's not actually the manner in which we are to go about living out our lives as believers. I think what we are to do is to go back to that idea of each one was created in the image of God. And so how do I recognize the beauty of the creator in this person, and what do they have to offer? What am I going to learn from my interactions with them? How am I going to be changed? How am I going to be different because I have decided to live my life alongside of them? And it's an exchange. It's like the mutual submission, the mutuality, the equality at the table. And we don't see that because we still have all of these hierarchies that we believe in. So,
Good. I mean, that resonates deeply with me. I mean, I have definitely considered a lot of, like we currently have a drop-in center. It's not for youth, but for folks on the streets here in Tampa. And like this kind of work over the years, it's like I've definitely considered like myself the needy one in these relationships. I mean, I know we all come with different needs, right? But like honestly, for me, this is the place where I've never really had much encounter with God in the sing-alongs or encounter with God. Like it's in these relationships that's real for me. It's in these relationships. I feel like I have insight or access to the heart of God or wisdom or insight on the city. And it's like, man, I desperately need these friends. And in some way, I'd say they've saved my life because they welcomed me into their space. And then I've hopefully been valuable to them as well, right? Like that we've shared some shoes and some sandwiches and some insight and some time together. And but that, I mean, just as you're sharing that, it just so resonates with me. And I think you're right that the flip really is like the need for us to say like we're coming almost selfishly, like I'm looking to gain here something from God, not selfishly like a check a box or do it some religious duty or do my mitzvah, but like to receive, to encounter God and to receive and enter into that reciprocal relationship.
Yeah. And when I think about the idea of city transformation, like the current story right now that I'm living out is we about 4 years ago, we were looking kind of across the city and just praying and asking the Lord, where do you want us to be at this time? I think of the way that, Hugh, talk about the archaeology, like the digging and the finding of what is it that God is doing? How do we go about that? So sometimes that is a very spiritual practice. Sometimes that is through prayer. Sometimes that's through researching the history of a city or understanding an area. And so we have our Old Town, Chinatown district is the historic center of Portland. And it's one of the most challenging areas in our city where really when you talk about principalities and powers, there are strongholds that have been set in the ground of this area that have not been broken for generations and generations. So we said, what would happen if transformation came to Old Town? Like the whole city would begin to have hope in an era that has felt very hopeless, really since we've come out of COVID. People look at Portland and, no good thing about Portland is in the news these days. And how could we bring hope to the city? So we just said, like, could we believe for Old Town? Like, is God maybe doing something and highlighting Old Town to us in this day and in this season because he wants to bring transformation to this area. And so we are establishing, we have a place called the Garden Space. We're establishing what we call an urban abbey around 6 practices: creativity, prayer, hospitality, justice, learning, and mission. And just beginning to yeah, see what could be built in those different areas. But we've been praying down there for 4 years and just asking the Lord, you know, how do you want to move in this area? And how can we see these strongholds broken? And so we've researched and looked at throughout the history of Portland, all the different people groups that lived in this area and the generational trauma that each one experienced, and how over the years, all of the people that were unwanted in our city were pushed into this Old Town district.
And you had the old Chinatown, you had the primary homeless ministries right there on Burnside, right?
Yeah.
And then Old Town was tucked behind it. So kind of, I remember even 40 years ago, you kind of didn't want to cross that Burnside because that's where the trouble was visible. And then Old Town was this little kind of dark little closet behind it that they did have a great pizza joint. That's the only thing. But I remember thinking, oh, we're going to go to Old Town. Get some pizza, you know.
But it's where all the, you know, the drug dealing, the prostitution, the houseless crisis, like it's all there. And we have a building now there. It's all still there right outside of our doors. And you can see, you know, the, I won't go into all of the history, but there's so much there. And so we now are seeing, we're seeing so much life starting to come into Old Town. It's really incredible. But we're in a building that was bought by a recovery, like a residential recovery program, faith-based residential recovery program called City Team. And the director, his name is Lance, and he has his own recovery story and went through the 2-year program at City Team. And he is now directing the program. And I have never seen such a good leader, really ever. Like, he is one of the best leaders that I've ever seen. And he is networking across the city in so many different areas. And he's really a major part of bringing life back into Old Town. And I say to him all the time, I'm like, Lance, like your story, there's other friends that we have that have had their own similar journey. I'm like, there are stories like yours that are in the people that are on the streets right now, that are sitting in their addiction, that are working as sex workers right now. And if we can just see the beauty of what is inside of these people and find a way to open a door for them to that recovery and that freedom, they are going to be a part of transforming the city. We need them. You know, it's not just that I can learn something, but it's like, as our city, we need these people to be healthy and whole, because what they're carrying is a part of the story that's being woven together for that transformation.
You were saying that the mayor of Portland, tell that story, because I think it's critical when you start thinking about, like, other people care about the city too. It might be from a different perspective, but
I love it when, I like when we start seeing the words that we're praying in the news, you know, that always piques my interest. And so the mayor, he did a little video a few weeks ago, and he said, Old Town is our genesis. If we see Old Town change, the whole city will change. And so it's, we have this phrase now that we picked up. Another group that works with us kind of coined this phrase: hope is blooming in the city of roses. And instead of looking at all of the negativity and the destruction and the things that are bad, we're choosing to look at the places of beauty, the places where hope is beginning to spring up, the places where we're seeing the life begin to come back into our city, and it's really beautiful.
I love this story because it's just a reminder, like if we were to just go, okay, Renee, teach us about prayer. Like this is why we pray, because the only person that knows how to unlock things in cities is the Lord. Like none of us have the creativity or the insight to go, oh, we should focus there right now. When I came to Alton, I would just walk and I'd go, oh, we'll do whatever you want. But we didn't know that this story here would start to unlock some things. Lots of other people are doing other things that are also helping unlock. But this has been a significant work, not because we came here and went, hey, we got to find an old building and start. We had no plans at all. So to me, the impetus of the taking a second to stop, or 4 years or 40 years, is that the Lord knows, like he's not just the savior of the world, he's like the smartest guy in the room. And that's why, like, apart from me, you can do nothing. So to me, the integration, the prayer being the work and the work being the prayer, to me, this is an embodiment of it. Yeah, it's just cool. Anything else that you feel like would be good, just in this context, to say the leaders? Because usually people that are listening to us, we know a lot of them. They really do care about their cities. None of them are trying to like grow churches and fund their livelihood. People seem to really care. Anything else you would just say as like maybe a final encouragement in this?
I think like when we talk about prayer, I think one of the things that prayer does, well, I'll say this. I think prayer walking is one of the easiest on-ramps to intercession. Like if you are not a community that is used to praying, in regular rhythms, try prayer walking. Like just start walking your city, walking your neighborhood, and praying what you see. So I'll just tell this. This is kind of a little plug. So I created with a friend of mine. We created a prayer walking app. It's called Holy Here. But the idea of this app came from a woman, and she was a missionary in Mexico. And there was a time where the economy crashed, and she was going to have to leave. And she was asking the Lord, like, what are we going to do? We've provided for all of these rural villages. We've done all of this work. How are they going to survive without us? And the Lord showed her a picture of like a map of the area with grid lines. And she felt like he just said, just walk the grid and pray, and teach the leaders to walk the grid and pray. So before she left, she did that. She taught them just to walk and to pray. And she didn't come back. She left and she came back like 5 years later. And she was shocked because she thought everything would be in disrepair, that the churches would be falling apart. And she said everything was beautiful. Like she would walk through the area and she saw very little need, very little lack. The churches were overflowing with people. And she said, what happened? And they said, we did what you asked. We walked the grid. And as we walked, we saw the needs of the people. We saw our neighbor's fence was broken down. So we got a group of people and we repaired it for them. We walked past some kids playing in the yard and we remembered their father recently died. So we got a group of women to come and be there with them every day to help cook and clean and take care of the children while the widow, did some work. And so as they began to walk, they saw the needs that were there. And they began to have ideas and strategies about how to help meet those needs. And their heart for the people and for the area, for the land, just broke in a way that gave them compassion and empathy and desire to not stay, just in their church, but to actually walk out and to see what they could do in the community around them. And then, of course, that grew their community, their church community, because people were being cared for and entering into relationship. And so I think that's just, an encouragement is to, take the time to walk and to pray and to see what God is doing, but also to recognize the needs of the community and not be afraid to let God break your heart for the things that break his heart.
Love it, John. You got any last little thoughts, questions?
Man, this is so good. Thank you so much for this. I guess I'll throw this in as a question, but if it's too much to answer, it's okay depending on the time we have. But I'm intrigued by, I would like to hear a little bit more of the description, like the actual description of what you refer to it. Did you call it Urban Abbey? Is this like a live-in community situation?
It's not a live-in community situation at this point. We would
describe it a little bit.
Yeah. Right now it's just one big room
Okay.
that we have, and so we have rhythms of prayer. So we have people from all around the city that come and facilitate that prayer. We have open times to the public that they can come in. So those hours are set, our morning and evening rhythms of prayer. But then we host all kinds of other things throughout the year and have all kinds of things going on out of this space. So this month, we've got a group that's just starting up that's drawing creatives together. Portland is a very creative city, and a lot of times artists within the church are asked to do things for the church, and they love to do that. That's a beautiful way to use their art as an expression in their faith. But they also, I think, need times when they can just come together and just create just for the sake of creation, and have times of rest and restoration for themselves through the creative process. And so we have someone that's beginning to draw creatives together from around the city and just have making spaces and times to network and connect with one another. We've done just a long kind of sticking with the practice of creativity. We have done several classes where we've brought in artists to do some kind of, like a class. So for example, we did kintsugi. So, kintsugi is the art of mending a vessel with the gold. You may have seen the Japanese bowls that have the gold, so you, through that process of mending a bowl or a vase or whatever, it's very natural then to begin to make that bridge about, what are the places in our lives that need to be mended and how do we go about mending the broken places. And so we welcome in, it's not just a place for believers, but a place for anyone, to come. And so around the table, we have, people of all walks of life mending these vessels and considering how to mend the broken places in their own life, and how when those places are mended, how beautiful life our life is and becomes because of those mended spaces. So so that's an example of creativity. We've hosted meetings. There have been quite a few meetings that have happened in our space around the issue of houselessness, because that's a big focus of the mayor. And so we brought the faith community together to talk with the mayor about ways that we can help meet the needs. We are housed in the building with this residential recovery program. And so a lot of the work that Lance is doing will flow into our space as well. We just did, one thing that we just did this last fall is we closed off the city block across from our building, and we set a table. We put 185 plates of china. We flew in a chef from the UK, and he worked together with a program down the street from us called Feed the Mass, which is addressing food insecurity in our city. And then we had outreach teams go throughout the week and invite people from the recovery programs, from the shelters, off the streets, sex workers, transitional programs, the whole gamut of the community down there. And they came and they took part in this beautiful dinner. We had a 4-course meal served for them. They sat at the table alongside of families and pastors and businessmen. We had live music going. It was like such a peaceful event in the midst of a chaotic part of town on a Friday night. And we were just like, we were in awe of, like, we had some expectation, but what happened around the table and the beauty of that moment and the peacefulness of that, like, it was nothing religious about it, but it was one of the most holiest moments I've ever experienced. And now we believe that just that event of hosting a table and offering beauty and hospitality to the community, we believe that that was intercession and shifted the atmosphere and changed the ground. And now what's being done on that same city block, it's now there's planning to close off that section permanently and create a permanent plaza that would offer beauty and hospitality to the community on a permanent basis. So
in the beginning, when you asked, like, what do we mean? What would it look like for the kingdom to come here on earth as it is in heaven? That picture you just painted is like such a concrete, like that. It looks like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
See, John, she didn't even want to talk today. It's early, but thank you. Killed it.
Yeah,
love
thank
you
so much. This is great.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Well,
hopefully I didn't talk too much.
If somebody wants to find you and hear more or whatever, what's a good way for them to find you?
Instagram.
I know you don't want to be found, but if they
Garden Space PDX. PDX is the airport code for Portland. So we're on Instagram. We have a website that I'm trying to keep up with, but I think the September programming is still on there. So.
That's all of our websites.
You know that.
Nobody's got time for that.
Yeah, IG is best at Garden Space PDX. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Love you.
Thanks.
Love you. Have a good day, John, over there in Tampa.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you guys more. Thanks.
See ya. Bye.